A huge part of the Gilded Age was the settlement of the West in the United States. The initial push for settlement in the West was people hoping to strike gold in California. This mining push began in 1848 when James W. Marshall struck gold in Coloma, California. The majority of miners showed up a year later in 1849, giving them the nickname the 49ers. The 49ers not only consisted of Americans but also Chinese, Hispanic, and Hawaiians seeking a new, richer life. Unfortunately, many of the miners weren't as lucky as they had hoped, and only about half had even made a profit. This led to a transition from individual miners to mining companies. Mining companies proved to be more successful, but still not enough to make a large profit. The real money in California was supplying the miners with their tools. Some of the richest men in California were merchants who sold simple things like denim jeans or pickaxes. After the California gold rush ended in 1855, there was a huge gap between the two coasts. Newly made railroads created easy access to the middle ground known as the Great Plains. Because many settlers had previously skipped over this territory to get to the Pacific coast, it was populated by mostly native tribes, making this dry land even more of a turnoff to people looking for a fresh start. The only thing that made this plot of land valuable was the vast amount of longhorn that grazed the Texan soil. Traditionally, longhorn meat wasn't valuable, but the Civil War led to a demand for meat. Many young men saw dollar signs when they realized this invaluable meat was now valuable. Not only could they make a profit, but they didn't have the risk of losing a lot of money because the longhorns were free. Cowboys began to herd the beasts to the railroads in Kansas, Missouri, Wyoming, to be shipped both to the east and the west. The herding was anything but easy because it so much relied on the cooperation of the weather. When the weather didn't cooperate, a herder had to rent or buy land to fence in their cattle to deal with a harsh winter or dry summer.
Other issues that the cowboys had to deal with were homesteaders. Homesteaders emigrated to the West because of the Homestead Act of 1862, which gave 160 acres of free land to anyone who lived on it for 5 years and improved and cultivated it. Another reason why people moved west was because railroads convinced people that they could become prosperous farmers in the West. The settlers were mostly Easterners, Germans, and Exodusters. Many of them sought the opportunity, and farmers engaged in commercial agricultural cash crops. The number of farms doubled during the settlement of the West. More advancements were created, such as the steel plow, mowers, and harvesters. This created more crops and was a huge advancement in the agricultural sense. Things such as windmills and hardier grains from Europe were used as well. The Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862 gave states public land to fund colleges to engage in agricultural research, but also brought failures due to the Panic of 1873 and the price of wheat went down due to overproduction. The natives faced pressure from settlers, railroads, and mining companies because the U.S. government abandoned the previous policy of leaving much of the West to the Indians, embracing smaller reservations. Most Plain tribes fought back but ultimately lost. This led to the signing of the Medicine Lodge Treaty of 1867, which assigned reservations for Southern Plains tribes in Indian Territory. Half of the settlers lost their claims. The Fort Laramie Treaty was also signed, which assigned Northern Plains tribes to a reservation in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The life on the reservation was very tough for the natives to live on. There was not enough land to engage in farming, corruption of government officials took money intended to buy for the natives, and this resulted in starvation and poverty. The natives hunted the buffalo almost to extinction. Overall, life on the reservation was very harsh and led to many deaths of the natives.
After the 1890 census declared the frontier closed, Frederick Turner began to write an essay, The Significance of the Frontier in American History. In this essay, Turner wrote about the frontier and how it shaped the American character. Turner described this character as an independent, self-confident, tough, optimistic, adventurous, and adaptable person. The thesis explains how Europeans evolved into Americans. American citizens were thought to be very different than Europeans previously. but they couldn't seem to come up with an explanation why. Turner's thesis answered this question by saying that the first settlers who arrived on the East Coast in the 17th century encountered a new environmental challenge that was quite different from what they had known. These settlers had to adapt to this new challenge. Turner essentially says that since the 17th century, settlers have evolved into Americans. He gives most of this credit to the expanding frontier and an American's natural instinct to explore new land. Westward expansion was huge, if not one of the largest parts of the Gilded Age, the age that shaped America.
Defeated Nero's army with 30 minutes work. I fought the greatest leaders and licked them every one. That's about the biggest thing that man had ever done. I was in the revolution when we set the country free. It was me and a couple of Indians that dumped the Boston Tea. We won the battle at Valley Forge and battle at Bully Run. That's about the biggest thing that man had ever done. There's a man across the ocean, and I guess you know him well. His name is Adolf Hitler, and damn his soul to hell. We'll kick him in the panzers and put him on the run. That'll be the biggest thing that man has ever done. Mines, mills, and factories that run for Uncle Sam, producing for the soldier boys that fight for this great land. Our job, it is a tough one, it'll take us every one. But this will be the biggest thing that man has ever done. Warehouse guys and teamsters and guys that skin the cats, guys that run the steel mills, the furnace and the blast. We'll stop the actors, rattlesnakes, and thieves of Olney Pond. That'll be the biggest thing that man has ever done. The elevators quit my talking cause I told you all I know. Please remember, partner, wherever you may go, the world is digging Hitler's grave, and when the job is done, that'll be the biggest thing that man has ever done. Yeah.